to the How to Play video for Survivors, a Dystopia Rising game. In this short tutorial, you will learn how to play the story-focused, cooperative board game following a caravan full of survivors desperately fleeing their settlement after it has been overrun by a horde of zombies. Faction leaders will make decisions from encounter to encounter, trying to hold on to as much resources as they can while they search for a new place to call home. But be careful. A splinter of the horde that overran your last home is following you, so you'll have to figure out a way to deal with them too. Today, you'll learn how to travel, determine encounters, face challenges, and eventually, settle in a new home. Start the game by picking one of the factions. Each faction will have primary and secondary skills, represented by dice pools and advantage cards. The amount of dice in your skill pools and advantage cards drawn will depend on the number of players, starting high and lowering as each new player is added to the game. For the purposes of this demo, I'm playing the Morettis, a nuke fam full of Irons, Yorkers, and Rovers. They are a combat-focused group, so I'll be starting with 4 combat dice, 1 civilized, and 3 production for my primary skills. If I choose, I can use my secondary skills and roll 1 combat, 3 civilized, and 3 econ instead. In addition, I'm going to draw 3 combat cards, 1 civilized card, and 2 econ cards. If this were a 2-player game, I'd get about half of all of that, as I'd be working with another faction with their own skills to contribute as well. We'd also pass around the Caravan Leader title every round, but since this is a 1-player, I'll be the Caravan Leader the entire time. We start off with 7 tiles on the table, each one representing an area of the wasteland with its own challenges and stories. The center tile is called the Caravan tile, as that's where the player's caravan is currently traveling through. These other tiles with the zombie figures represent the encroaching horde, which is hungrily chasing after your caravan through the wastes. Now that we have everything set up, it's time to travel. Check any adjacent tile to travel to. Strategies will need to take into account the dangers you can see, including the horde, which will advance behind you. Once the caravan leader decides on a direction to go, the caravan moves. 3 new areas of the wasteland are added, starting at the north side of the new caravan tile and going clockwise after that. After placing the new tiles, move the horde towards the caravan tile. Any of the horde that can move onto the caravan tile will. The others will just swarm towards and around it without moving onto each other's areas. Avoiding the horde is usually a good idea, but you'll have to deal with them sooner or later. They're a nightmare to any new settlement, so sometimes moving to coincide with a portion of the horde is a good strategy to thin them out. Now remove the 3 areas that do not touch the new caravan tile, bringing the board back to 7 tiles. The tile you travel to will have unique art and a number at the bottom. The number corresponds to the page in the book. Look up your encounter and read the intro. This area is a ruins, number 32. Let's see what it says. Once upon a time, the skeletal towers of steel rising around you were buildings full of people going about their daily business. But that was hundreds of years ago, before the fall of humanity. As the caravan rumbles over the broken surface of asphalt roads, a cry of alarm rings out as a strange light flashes from one of the few intact buildings. Lightning climbs upwards from the roof, leaping between the tines of a towering Jacob's ladder. One of the wasteland's mad techno-savants must call this place their lair. The stage is set, but we don't know what the challenges are. To figure that out, look at the caravan tile and count 1 challenge for every color on its corners, 2 if a corner matches one of the adjacent tiles, and 4 if all 3 corners match. This will determine the combat, civilized, and production challenges on the tile. The highest challenge is your threat, while the other 2 make up your obstacle. You will have to achieve successes on your skill dice equal to or greater than the number of each challenge. Missing the challenge level will result in losses to your caravan. Now we get to calculate all of the challenges for this particular encounter. We're going to count everything that's on the center caravan tile here, plus anything that matches on the tiles around it. The easiest way to do this is to go by challenge. We have combat, we have production, and we have civilized. Let's start with combat. 1, 2, 3 on the caravan tile. Easy enough. But we also have to add in anything that matches on the adjacent tiles. So this doesn't match right here, but this one does. So this becomes 1, 2. This one down here matches all 3, which makes it even more dangerous. That counts for a total of 4. So to recount these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 combat challenges. We're also going to add in the 1, 2, 3 production, and 1, 2 civilized. So our total encounter challenges are 7 combat, 3 production, and 2 civilized. Each horde on the caravan tile adds 3 challenges to any type. The caravan leader makes the choice, adjusting the challenge totals appropriately. The horde is then removed from the board. Fortunately, I don't have any horde to deal with this time, but I'll need to thin them out sooner or later. I also have a card here called Bait, which will allow me to spend an herb out of my resources and remove 2 of these combat challenges. However, since I'm pretty competent in combat, I'm going to save that one for later. The threat determines the next part of the encounter to read, and also presents the most danger to your caravan. A resource determined by the encounter will be lost per missed success. In this case, the type of threat is combat, with 7 total challenges. The obstacle are the 2 other challenges. Each must be overcome individually, but they have less of an impact than the threat. We're going to read the combat challenge portion of the encounter. As you can see, there are civilized and production versions as well, which would have been triggered had they been the threat. Distracted by the light show upon the building, we didn't notice as the savants' minions started to emerge from their hiding places. Survivors who had clearly been victims of terrible experiments, with stitched-together flesh and strange mechanisms built into their bodies. The telltale blue glow of one of the unstable identifies the ominous figure through the window as a loudspeaker roars out, "I require your fuel for my generator!" Well, we're not about to give it up without a fight. Each combat success we miss will cost us 1 fuel, so we really need to make sure we meet that, otherwise our resources will take a big hit. We'll lose a survivor if we miss both of the obstacles, gain and lose nothing if we only make one of them, and gain a production card if we meet both. If we pass the threat and obstacle, we collect a resolve as a bonus. With the encounter read and the challenges totaled, I now have to choose which skills I'm using. In a multiplayer game, each faction will choose between their primary and secondary skills, adding the appropriate dice to a communal pool to be rolled by the caravan leader. Since this is a combat challenge, I could keep my primary skill pool and roll 4 combat dice, 1 civilized, and 3 production. Or I could roll my secondary skill pool and roll 1 combat die, 3 civilized, and 3 production. That might seem risky, but I have this card called Traps, which allows me to roll 2 extra combat dice. These advantage cards are single use, which makes me nervous, so I'm going to hold on to them for later. As you can see here, I've rolled 6 successes in combat, which means I'm currently losing 1 fuel. But let's see what the rest of the dice are. I rolled 1 success on my civilized dice. I rolled 2 successes on my production dice, plus 1 additional combat success. Note that each one of these dice has a side with 2 successes, plus 1 success for another type of challenge. This combat encounter would remove 1 fuel per missed success on the threat. Fortunately, I had 6 successes on my combat dice, and got a 7th one from one of my production die, so I didn't end up losing any fuel. Unfortunately, I missed the civilized and production obstacles. That meant I lose 1 survivor per the encounter. Fortunately, no matter how many successes I missed the obstacle by, the loss didn't change. I have 2 advantage cards I could play now. One of them is Opportunist, a production ability that allows me to double the bonus. Unfortunately, I don't qualify for the bonus since I didn't pass both the threat and the obstacle, so I'll save this for later. However, I do have Scavenger, which gives me 1 scrap after resolving a combat encounter, which this was. So I'm going to use that so I at least get a resource out of this. After completing the encounter, I have to decide if this is my new home and settle, or if I'm going to continue on. The place I settle is almost as important as the resources I have and how many of the Horde are still following me. Different locations will have different benefits and drawbacks, so choose wisely. If I were to settle here, I'd consult the encounter one last time, read the settlement section, then follow instructions from there. Since I have 3 Horde following me and plenty of fuel, I'm going to continue through the wastes to see what I can find. That's it. I now start a new turn and continue with the travel step, continuing on until I choose to settle a new home, or I run out of fuel and I'm forced to stop. Either way, I could finish off my epic tale of escape and survival in the wasteland. Thanks for joining me on this demo for Survivors, a Dystopia Rising story. I look forward to hearing your stories from around the table, and hope you find a safe place to settle in the wastes.